Oh, that's fucking adorable. The setting is early 2020. Wholesaler sends me a deal in Dallas, Texas. It needs some work, but it's just more ugly. It's not really distressed. It's just kind of not been remodeled since the late 80s, early 90s. Very livable condition. So during this time, we had sold quite a few properties to iBuyers. And if you're not familiar with what an iBuyer is, that's Open Door, OfferPad, Orchard, Zillow, companies like that. And we had kind of developed a new strategy for taking down properties because you have to own them. You cannot wholesale properties to iBuyers. And we had developed this strategy where we were taking deals down, not doing any work, and essentially wholesaling them to Open Door and Orchard. Those were the two main ones that we were working with. Now, in early 2020, I get this deal. What I would do is I would take the information from that and I would submit the property to these iBuyers to see what they would offer on the deal. So in this particular case, I was buying the property from the wholesaler for $195,000, and we received a offer from Orchard for $275,000. Now, of course, there was going to be fees. There was going to be the inspection where they, kind of hit you for the repairs that are needed. And I was looking at this and I'm like, all right, 275,000. We're getting it for 195. We're probably going to walk away with about $40,000 to $45,000 of net profit on this deal. So we went ahead, we signed the contract with the wholesaler, got the hard money loan, got funds from private money lender, and we actually took ownership of the property. We closed on it. We bought the deal. We signed the contract with Orchard for $275,000. Back then, they didn't have any seasoning period, right? You didn't have to own it for a certain period of time before they would buy it from you. So literally the day after we closed, I signed the contract with Orchard for $275,000. They went out, they did their inspection, and they came back. And this is the first time this had ever popped up. Now, this was ignorance on my part, but the property had cast iron plumbing. And because of that, they were requiring that we replace all of the plumbing prior to them purchasing the property. Now, previously, when they had gone out and they had done their inspection, they would come back and they would say, hey, there's certain aspects of the property that we are going to put a repair budget for. But because this was such a large rehab and such large rehab number and replacing all of the cast iron plumbing, they didn't even want to put a number on that. Essentially, they just wanted to terminate. Now, this is the first time that I had come across where they just jumped straight to termination. So I placed several phone calls. Hey, is there any way you guys could just take this out? We desperately need to sell the property. And the answer was absolutely not. We will not buy the property with cast iron plumbing. That's not in our scope of work. That's not what we're willing to do. So Orchard immediately terminated on the property. However, I did have a similar type offer, a little bit lower from Open Door. So I reached out to Open Door and I said, hey, I've been made aware that this property has cast iron plumbing. Will you buy it with cast iron plumbing? No, we will not. If I replace the plumbing, will you buy it then? Yes. However, if you remember, I said this was early 2020. So simultaneous to this happening where we find out that the property has cast iron plumbing and Orchard no longer wants to buy the property, Open Door's not willing to buy the property, all iBuyers stopped buying all properties due to the pandemic. This immediately ruined our entire strategy on this deal. So now at this point, I have a private money lender who I promised this was going to be a quick transaction. I have a hard money loan, which means every single month I have a hard cost of 12% interest on the hard money loan that I have to pay. and I don't have the buyer. My exit strategy that I had for this deal is no longer viable. So we have a decision to make. We either invest anywhere between $20,000 to $25,000 in replacing all of the cast iron plumbing to then list it, or we could just list it as is. So our decision is, listen, we feel like we bought this at a pretty decent price. Let's just go ahead and list it as is without investing any more money into replacing the cast iron plumbing. However, the other thing that happened during the pandemic is everyone was pretty skeptical early on, especially when the world was completely shut down. Like, people weren't going to see properties. People were afraid to even see each other. No one was getting out of the house. So we listed the property for sale, but no one was going to see the property. We were stuck, literally just stuck with this property that needed some rehab, not a ton. We thought we had a viable exit strategy, but that backfired on us. And now, what do? This is one of those deals that we just kind of sat on. And because we were ignorant to the cast iron plumbing and that being basically a deal killer with the iBuyers, we were just stuck. And we ended up being stuck with this deal for a year. Now, part of the reason why this deal was stuck with us for a year is because when we listed it, it ended up, there was no showings early on, and it kind of stigmatized the property. Days on market got extremely high, and every future buyer, once the world started becoming like, hey, this is the new norm. Yeah, COVID's a thing, but we still need to buy properties. We want to move into this school district and whatnot. It just stigmatized the property where it was like, hey, there must be something going on here. So we actually took the property off of the market. We did a light rehab, kind of lipstick on a pig, just to see if that would boost the interest in the property. And it did. We got an offer on it. We went under contract. They backed out during their inspection period. So then we had to go back on the market, which even stigmatizes the property even more so. It was just the gift that kept on giving. And this is why it made, oh, that's fucking adorable. Because the whole time, I'm like, this was supposed to be an easy transaction where we just take ownership, we immediately turn around, and we sell it to Orchard, the iBuyer, and there's no issues. So this is one of those things where I see people nowadays where it's like, hey, I'm going to do a quick wholesale, or I'm going to do a quick novation, or I'm going to sell to an iBuyer. Those are all great strategies. However, you always need to be protecting yourself and thinking about what is the worst case scenario. Because when I was doing these deals, I never was really worried about worst case scenario. I never once thought that this property had cast iron plumbing, and I wasn't even worried about checking to see if it had cast iron plumbing. That just wasn't on my radar as being a potential deal killer and making me be stuck with close to $2,000 a month in hard costs. So we went from potentially making somewhere between $40,000 to $45,000 in net profit to a year later, when we actually sold the property, losing $10,000. Now, it doesn't sound like, oh, $10,000. I mean, that's not crazy in comparison to the amount of deals that we've done. However, it was crippling along the way because there's the mental bandwidth of what it takes when you're having to navigate the conversations with your lenders, with trying to answer, what are we going to do to move this deal? During already difficult times where the world was changing, we didn't know what was going on. One of the things that we had to concern ourselves with was getting rid of this property so we're not stuck with something that essentially there is no other exit strategy. It couldn't be a rental property. The only thing that we could do with this was turn around and sell it. And this took so much mental bandwidth, time, and effort, where one way it's over an hour drive from our office to the property. There was multiple days that we had to drive out there and check on the property, meet contractors, get bids, Make sure that the house, the toilets were flush. It smelled good. There weren't cobwebs and insects and things like that. Make sure no one broke into the property. All of these random things that you have to worry about when you have ownership of a property. So, yes, did we only end up losing $10,000, which, mind you, is still a lot of money, but it also drained us. It was an energy draining distraction for close to 12 months. So, looking back, should I have done the deal? Absolutely not. We should not have done it. It was not part of our hedgehog concept. And this is why I'm so big when people say, hey, I'm a wholesaler, but I'm going to take this deal down and I'm going to do a novation or I'm going to do a wholesale on it. Are you sure? Have you thought about the worst case scenario and the impact that that can have on your business moving forward? Is the $40,000 to $45,000 profit worth it to you if worst case scenario happens and it turns into a $10,000 loss? Looking back, I would have said absolutely not. I do not even want to put my business at risk for that $40,000 potential profit because I would have stayed focused. The amount of money that I could have made doing other deals in the 12 months that I owned that property and the time that I had to take thinking about how I was going to exit that deal was crippling. So let me know if you've had any deals that have fallen into this. Give me a like. Come on. $10,000 loss, 12 months. Made me feel better about it. We'll see you guys tomorrow.